What happens when one of Hollywood's most recognizable stars enters what appears to be a friendly interview, only to discover that the host has a very different agenda? Jennifer Lopez walked onto The View expecting the usual conversation about her career and upcoming projects. Instead, she found herself facing a series of pointed remarks from Behar that quickly turned the interview into an uncomfortable confrontation. The tension in the studio seemed to begin before Jennifer even took her seat. Behind the scenes, Joy had reportedly been preparing to ask what she considered difficult questions, convinced that she was going to challenge the superstar in a way other interviewers supposedly avoided. With her notes ready and her talking points organized, Joy appeared determined to make the conversation as provocative as possible. Jennifer entered the studio with her familiar confidence, greeting the audience as applause filled the room. She was there to promote her latest work and seemed prepared for a standard promotional appearance. However, the mood changed almost immediately after Joy introduced her. Joy greeted Jennifer with a smile before turning the conversation toward her lengthy career. She then made a surprisingly blunt remark, suggesting that Jennifer might have already reached the peak of her professional success. The audience became noticeably uncomfortable. Several people shifted in their seats while the other hosts exchanged uncertain looks. Jennifer raised her eyebrows but remained composed. She responded calmly, explaining that she believed her strongest work could still be ahead of her. She emphasized that she was continually developing as an artist and remained excited about the projects she had planned. Joy, however, did not appear convinced. She questioned whether Jennifer's recent films had achieved the same level of critical recognition as some of her earlier projects. She then pressed further, asking when Jennifer had last experienced a genuine success that was not connected to attention surrounding her personal life. The atmosphere became noticeably colder. Jennifer kept her professional demeanor and explained that success could be defined in many different ways. She pointed out that her audience continued to support her work, and that their response mattered greatly to her. Joy repeated the phrase about Jennifer's fans with a dismissive tone before shifting toward another personal criticism. She questioned whether Jennifer should still be competing with performers who were much younger and suggested that perhaps it was time for her to step aside and allow a new generation to take over. At that point, the discomfort among the other hosts became impossible to ignore. One attempted to steer the discussion in another direction, but Joy insisted that the questions were reasonable. Jennifer remained calm, but there was a clear change in her expression. Instead of reacting emotionally, she turned the situation around by asking Joy why she seemed so determined to declare her career finished. Jennifer pointed out that she had numerous projects ahead and remained professionally active. Her response immediately changed the energy in the studio. Joy scoffed at the idea of Jennifer being fully booked and questioned what those projects actually involved. She suggested that Jennifer was simply making desperate attempts to remain relevant. That comment finally pushed the conversation into a more serious confrontation. Jennifer's voice became firmer. She said that if they were going to be completely honest, then they should address what was really happening. In her view, Joy was using her position to attack another woman for reasons that had little to do with the quality of her professional work. For a moment, Joy's confidence seemed to weaken. She quickly defended herself by claiming that she was simply asking questions that viewers wanted answered. Jennifer disagreed. She explained that there was a difference between asking challenging questions and deliberately creating an uncomfortable situation at someone else's expense. She then questioned whether Joy treated every guest this way, or whether there was something particular about her that had prompted such aggressive treatment. The studio became almost completely silent. Joy attempted to regain control by suggesting that Jennifer was being overly sensitive. She argued that difficult questions were part of the job, and compared her approach to journalism. Jennifer immediately challenged that comparison. She explained that there was a significant difference between legitimate tough questioning and simply being unnecessarily hostile. Her tone remained controlled, but her message was unmistakable. She accused Joy of crossing the line from challenging conversation into outright nastiness. Joy became defensive and insisted that she had spent years working in journalism and knew exactly what she was doing. Jennifer did not back down. She interrupted and asked what exactly Joy believed she was accomplishing with the conversation. Her voice now carried the confidence of someone who had reached the end of her patience. Jennifer said that from her perspective, the discussion looked less like an honest interview and more like an attempt to embarrass her on national television. She wanted to understand why Joy seemed so determined to tear her down. The other hosts remained largely frozen, watching the confrontation unfold without knowing how to intervene. The audience was equally captivated. What had started as a promotional interview had transformed into a tense exchange, with Jennifer Lopez no longer simply answering questions but directly challenging the person asking them. Joy appeared to realize that the conversation was no longer unfolding according to her expectations. Jennifer had refused to become defensive or allow herself to be portrayed as a fading celebrity. Instead, she had calmly confronted the tone of the interview and forced attention back onto the way the questions were being asked. The tension across the studio continued to build as both women held their positions. What was supposed to be a routine television appearance had become an intense confrontation, with Jennifer firmly taking control of the conversation. Joy's expression shifted as she struggled to respond. Her earlier confidence had disappeared, replaced by visible uncertainty. She clearly had not expected Jennifer to challenge her so directly, and being confronted in front of the audience seemed to catch her completely off guard. "I'm not sure what you're suggesting," Joy finally said, her voice noticeably less forceful than before. Jennifer remained composed. She leaned slightly forward and answered in an even tone, but there was unmistakable firmness behind her words. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm asking you directly. Why are you working so hard to put me down? What have I personally done to you?" Joy attempted to dismiss the accusation with a nervous laugh. She told Jennifer that she was reading too much into the conversation and insisted that she treated all of her guests the same way. Jennifer immediately challenged that claim. "Really? Because I watched your program yesterday when you interviewed that young singer. You spent almost the entire conversation praising her talent, talking about how much potential she had and how promising her future was." She paused briefly before continuing. "So either you're not being honest with me right now, or you're not being honest with yourself." A low murmur moved through the audience. People could sense that the conversation had gone far beyond an ordinary disagreement. Some audience members appeared stunned by how quickly Jennifer had turned the criticism back toward Joy. Joy's face became visibly flushed. She attempted to explain that the situations were completely different because the younger performer was only beginning her career and needed support and encouragement. Jennifer listened carefully before responding. "So she deserves encouragement because she's young, but I deserve criticism because I'm older?" Her voice became quieter, yet somehow the entire studio seemed to hear every word. "Joy, let me ask you something." Joy looked cautious. "How old are you?" There was an uncomfortable pause. "What does that have to do with anything?" Joy replied defensively. Jennifer maintained a restrained smile. "Just humor me." After another moment, Joy gave her age. Jennifer repeated it, then pointed out the contradiction in the argument that had been made earlier. "You're telling me that at my age I should be thinking about stepping away. Yet you're still working and appearing on television yourself. So according to the logic you're using against me, why should the rules suddenly be different for you?" The audience reacted immediately. A wave of surprise moved across the studio, while the cameras remained focused on the two women. Joy opened her mouth to respond but struggled to find the right words. Jennifer continued before she could fully recover. "If we're going to argue that people should make room for younger generations, shouldn't everyone be willing to apply that standard consistently?" Joy insisted that the situation was not comparable. Jennifer calmly asked why it was different. "Because you're sitting behind a desk and I'm standing in front of the cameras." "Is that really the explanation? Somehow your age doesn't limit your right to continue working, but mine is supposed to determine whether I deserve a career." One of the other hosts attempted to redirect the discussion, sensing that the exchange was becoming increasingly tense. Jennifer respectfully but firmly refused to let the subject change. "No, I want to understand this." She turned her attention back toward Joy. "You've built a long career by remaining active and relevant for decades. Yet you're telling me that I should step away while I'm still in my 50s. Help me understand why the standard seems to change depending on who you're talking about." Joy's response was quieter this time. "I'm not trying to compete with people in their 20s. Neither am I," Jennifer answered immediately. Her tone softened slightly. "I'm competing with myself. I'm trying to become better than I was yesterday. I'm trying new things, taking on different projects and continuing to grow." "Why is that embarrassing to you?" The studio fell silent again. Joy appeared to search for an answer that would allow her to defend her earlier comments without making the situation worse. Eventually, she suggested that Jennifer was taking the discussion too personally. Jennifer tilted her head slightly. "Am I?" She reminded Joy that the interview had begun with a statement that her best work was supposedly behind her. Then came suggestions that she should retire, followed by comments portraying her current projects as desperate efforts to remain relevant. "If I'm taking it personally," Jennifer said, "maybe that's because you made it personal." Joy tried to regain control by explaining that she had simply wanted an honest discussion about the entertainment business. Jennifer disagreed. "No, that's not what happened." She argued that a genuinely balanced conversation would have acknowledged the accomplishments that had brought Jennifer to that point in her career, rather than focusing exclusively on criticism. "You could have talked about the projects I've completed, the music I've released, the work I'm producing and the opportunities I'm still pursuing. But none of that came up. Instead, you decided to begin by telling me that my best days were behind me. Joy looked around the studio, seemingly searching for support, but the room remained unusually quiet. Jennifer's confidence grew as she continued. You want to know what I think is really happening here? She paused. I think you're projecting something onto me. Her words landed heavily. I think you're uncomfortable with the idea that women can continue to succeed, create, evolve and remain ambitious as they get older. Maybe that challenges the way you think people are supposed to see aging. The audience remained silent. Jennifer then added that criticizing someone simply because of their age said more about the person making the criticism than the person receiving it. Joy finally found her voice. How dare you call me bitter? Jennifer looked directly at her. Then what would you call it? The question hung in the air as the tension reached its highest point, leaving everyone in the studio waiting for what would come next. From where I'm standing, it feels like you invited me here with the intention of embarrassing me, and now you're frustrated because your plan didn't succeed. Joy struggled to answer. She insisted that what she had done was simply journalism, but her defense sounded increasingly unconvincing. Jennifer let out a brief laugh, though there was nothing amused about it. Journalism. Journalism requires preparation, evidence, balance, and fairness. What happened here was completely different. You invited me onto your program under the impression that we were going to have a normal conversation, then used the opportunity to attack me personally, while disguising those attacks as legitimate questions. That isn't journalism. That's simply cruel. The word seemed to hit Joy particularly hard. Her expression changed, and she glanced toward the other hosts as if expecting someone to intervene. Instead, they remained unusually quiet, avoiding eye contact and allowing the confrontation to continue. Jennifer, I think you should calm down, Joy said quietly. Jennifer immediately noticed the contradiction. Calm down? Her voice rose for the first time, causing the entire studio to become even more attentive. You spent the opening part of this interview trying to convince everyone that I'm finished, irrelevant and somehow embarrassing because I'm still working. And now, after all of that, you're telling me to calm down? Joy quickly objected. I never said those things. You absolutely did, Jennifer replied. She began listing the comments Joy had made earlier, making it clear that she had listened carefully to every word. You told me my best work was behind me. You suggested that I was desperately trying to remain relevant. You said I should step aside and make room for younger performers. You questioned whether I was too old to continue competing in the entertainment industry. Jennifer paused before adding that Joy could not simply deny statements that had been made moments earlier. Did you honestly think I wouldn't remember what you said? Did you assume I would just sit here and accept it without responding? Joy attempted to restore some authority by telling Jennifer that she was making the situation far more dramatic than necessary. Dramatic. Jennifer stood from her chair. Her movement instantly changed the energy in the studio. Let me tell you what I think is dramatic. What's dramatic is using a national television platform to attack another woman simply because you have a problem with her continued success. The audience fell silent. Joy's frustration finally broke through. I am not threatened by you. Her voice had changed completely. The calm presentation she had maintained earlier was gone. Why would I be threatened by someone who peaked years ago? Jennifer smiled slightly. There it is. She looked directly at Joy. That is exactly what I was talking about. Thank you for finally saying what you actually think. The Joy seemed to realize immediately that she had gone too far, but the statement had already been made. The cameras had captured it, and everyone in the studio had heard it. Jennifer continued, now sounding more confident than angry. You just proved my argument for me. You claim you aren't threatened by me, because you believe I reached my peak years ago. But the truth is that you seem deeply uncomfortable with the idea that someone can continue succeeding long after the point when people expect her to slow down. Joy's hands moved nervously as she tried to defend herself. How dare you talk to me like that? I've been in this industry longer than you've been alive. Jennifer did not retreat. And what have you built during that time? The question immediately shifted the conversation again. What have you created? When was the last time you developed something instead of criticizing someone else's work? When was the last time you used your platform to encourage another woman rather than tear her down? Joy stood as if she were preparing to leave. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Jennifer stopped her. You started this conversation, Joy. If you wanted to discuss careers, then let's actually discuss careers. She began explaining the scale of her professional accomplishments, emphasizing her decades of work across music, film, business, and entertainment. I've spent years building a career across different industries. I've released successful music, appeared in major films, developed businesses, and worked with countless people. I'm still creating, still producing and still finding new opportunities. Jennifer then contrasted that with the criticism she had received. You wanted to discuss whether I'm still relevant? So let's talk about what relevance actually means. Relevance isn't about reaching a certain age and disappearing. It's about continuing to contribute, continuing to evolve, and continuing to connect with an audience. Joy eventually sat back down, looking visibly exhausted. Jennifer's tone softened, but her words became even more pointed. The saddest part is that this could have been a completely different conversation. You could have celebrated the fact that women can have careers lasting decades. You could have talked about longevity and the challenges of staying successful in an industry obsessed with youth. She paused. Instead, you chose to attack me. Joy quietly denied the accusation. That isn't true. Jennifer looked at her. Then explain it to me. Why did you spend this entire interview trying to convince everyone that I should stop working? Why does my continued success seem to bother you so much? She reminded Joy that she had never personally attacked her and had arrived expecting a professional conversation. I came here in good faith. I respected this program. I expected questions about my work. Instead, I walked into an ambush. The studio became almost completely silent. Even the background sounds seemed to disappear as everyone waited for Joy's response. For several seconds, Joy said nothing. Then her voice cracked. Because it isn't fair. Jennifer's expression changed slightly. What isn't fair? Joy struggled to hold back her emotions. It isn't fair that you can still look like that you're talented, successful, and have people constantly cheering for you. It isn't fair that you seem to get everything while so many other people spend their lives fighting for whatever opportunities remain. The confession stunned the room. The hostility that had dominated the interview suddenly gave way to something much more vulnerable, leaving the audience completely speechless. Jennifer's expression softened when she heard Joy admit that she felt forgotten. The anger that had been visible earlier gave way to something closer to understanding. Joy, that isn't how success works. Success isn't a limited pie where my success means there is less available for everyone else. There is room for all of us. Joy shook her head, still visibly frustrated. Not when one person takes up all the space. Jennifer answered without hesitation. I'm not taking all the space. I'm simply occupying the space I've worked for. There's a difference. Instead of spending so much energy trying to push me down, maybe that energy could have been used to build yourself up. Joy lowered her gaze and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, accidentally smudging the makeup around them. You don't understand what it feels like, she said quietly. Jennifer looked at her with a calmer expression. What don't I understand? Being forgotten. Joy whispered. Being invisible. Having people act like you don't matter anymore. For the first time during the confrontation, Jennifer did not immediately respond. She sat quietly for several seconds, seemingly considering what Joy had revealed. When she finally spoke, her voice was much gentler. Joy, you are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You have a platform. You have an audience. People listen when you speak. You still have influence, and that influence matters. Jennifer paused before continuing. But you have to decide what you want to do with that influence. You can use it to encourage people, open doors, and make others feel valued. Or you can use it to tear people down because you're frustrated with where you are in your own life. That choice belongs to you. Joy looked unconvinced. That's easy for you to say. You're still beautiful. You're still young. Jennifer gave a small shake of her head. I'm 54. And I wake up every morning knowing I still have to work for everything I want. I take care of myself. I stay informed. I pay attention to what is happening in the industry. I take chances, and sometimes those chances fail. She continued with a steady confidence. When something doesn't work, I get back up and try again. Nothing about my career has happened automatically. Nothing was simply handed to me because of how I look. There have been setbacks, criticism, rejection, and difficult moments along the way. Jennifer leaned forward slightly. So when you look at my career and assume everything came easily, that tells me you don't really understand what it takes to maintain success over several decades. Joy looked toward Jennifer with tearful, exhausted eyes. The anger that had dominated the earlier confrontation had largely disappeared. So what am I supposed to do now? Joy asked. Jennifer's response was simple. You apologize. Joy remained silent. You apologize to me. Jennifer continued. You apologize to the audience watching this. And you apologize in your own way, to every woman you've ever treated like this. Then you make a decision to do better. The studio became completely still. Joy stared at Jennifer for several moments. No one interrupted. The other hosts remained quiet, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. Finally, Joy spoke. I'm sorry. Her voice was barely audible. Jennifer looked at her. Louder, so everyone can hear you. Joy took a breath. I'm sorry. She raised her voice enough for the entire studio to hear. I'm sorry, Jennifer, and I'm sorry to everyone watching. I was wrong. Jennifer nodded. Thank you. That's all I wanted. The tension that had filled the studio for so long finally began to disappear. Jennifer returned to her chair, adjusted her dress and composed herself before looking directly toward the camera. Then, remarkably, she changed the tone of the entire segment. "So," she said with a light smile, almost as though the previous confrontation had never happened, "would you like to talk about my new projects now, or should we just end the interview here?" The audience immediately erupted into applause. The other hosts began clapping. Members of the production crew joined in, and the audience rose from their seats in a standing ovation. Jennifer remained composed, accepting the reaction without appearing overly pleased with herself. The confrontation had been intense, but she had managed to bring the discussion back to the original purpose of her appearance. Joy remained seated, visibly humbled by everything that had happened. The dramatic exchange had transformed the atmosphere of the entire studio. Jennifer had entered expecting a conventional promotional interview, and instead found herself defending her career, her age and her right to continue pursuing her ambitions. What made the moment particularly striking was that she did not finish by simply attacking Joy. After pushing back against the criticism, she recognized the insecurity underneath it and offered Joy an opportunity to take responsibility. The conversation had begun with Joy questioning whether Jennifer still belonged at the center of the entertainment industry. It ended with Jennifer reminding everyone that success does not have an expiration date. She emphasized that one person's achievements do not prevent another person from succeeding. There is room for different generations, different careers and different definitions of accomplishment. Jennifer's message was ultimately about refusing to let someone else's insecurity determine your worth. She had defended herself without surrendering her dignity, and when Joy finally admitted that her behavior had been wrong, Jennifer accepted the apology instead of continuing the attack. The studio gradually settled as the applause faded, but the impact of the confrontation remained. Jennifer Lopez had turned a hostile interview into a powerful statement about ambition, aging, resilience and the importance of supporting other women. The conversation had started with an attempt to question whether Jennifer still belonged in the spotlight. By the end, she had made it clear that she had no intention of stepping away simply because someone else believed she should.